right now. The sikh we're going to learn is the first sikh. Look at the sikh is chelik of Beis to Pasha Vayikra. Steht in Medrash, it says in Medrash like this. Omer Rabasa said me, Ma maschilim l'tenekes b'teiras kehanim. They maschilim b'breishis. Why, when we start learning Chumash with children, we start with teiras kehanim. Teiras kehanim is another name for Chumash Vayikra. And the reason it's called teiras kehanim because Chumash Vayikra deals with karbonis. The whole Chumash is about karbonis. That's why it's called teiras kehanim, the Torah of the kehanim, which is karbonis. So the Medrash asks, Rabasa asks, why do we start when we start learning with children Chumash? We start with Chumash Vayikra, with Pashas Vayikra, Chumash Vayikra. Ve'ei maschilim b'breishis, and we don't start with Breishis. It would make sense to start from the beginning of the Chumash. Elo, the answer, he says, Shatinekes Teirim, because the children, the little children, are pure. Va'karbonis Teirim, and the karbonis, the sacrifices, are pure. Yoveyu Teirim v'yisasku b'Teirim. So let the Teirim, which are the children, the little children, are pure. Let them come and get involved in pure things, which is karbonis. So it refers to the karbonis Teirim. And that's the reason why we start. Now, it doesn't mean we start and we learn Vayikra straight through. With little children, you can't learn Chumash Vayikra. It's karbonis, it's hard. But the beginning, we start with Vayikra, and we learn a little bit with the children of Vayikra, and then we go back to the regular, the way they say it, the way they learn. But the reason it says here why we start with children with Vayikra and not with Breishis, because the children are Tahirin, pure, Toyer. Toyer means clean, but it means pure. The karbonis are pure, referred to as Tahirin. So let the Tahirin come and get involved in Tahirin. What's meant about karbonis Tahirin? What do you mean the karbonis are Toyer? What's shot to give it karbonis a title as Toyer? Because karbonis, why did Toyer? What does the word Toyer fit to the union of karbonis? So I tell my Forshim, some Forshim say das meint as karbonis darf gebracht werden betare. Nicht betumen. When you bring a korban, you have to, the person who brings the korban, or the kayan who makes the korban, has to be Toyer. A person could become tummy. You know, here tumah and katara doesn't mean physical, dirty or clean. It means certain things make a person tummy. If you touch a dead body, you touch nevelo, certain things make a person tummy. So when you bring karbonis, everything has to be done when the people involved are Toyer. And they cannot be tummy. So that's what it means. Karbonis are called Tahirim because people who bring the karbonis have to be Toyer. Like andere Meforshim, according to other Meforshim, there's a different reason why karbonis are referred to as Tahirim. Adur karbonis vert met Toyer from chet. Because if you bring a korban, you become pure from a chet. You become pure from sin. It takes away your sin. So karbonis are called Tahirim because they cause the person to become Toyer. The Rebbe says, Beidi Pirushim Vayin Rabbi Lechur and Niglatik, both Shotim are not simple. Why? From the words of the Medrash, where it says the karbonis are Toher, are pure, is mashma, it seems, adoretzmen wegen the karbonis atzmon. We're talking about the karbonis themselves, azay seine Teirin, that the karbonis are Toher. That's what it says, karbonis are Toher. Und nicht wegen die was bringen sie, and not that the people who bring it are Toyer. According to these two pshatim we said before, it's not that karbonis are Toyer. The people are Toyer. Or the first shot that the people have to be Toyer when they bring the korban. Anybody involved? Or that the korban will make the people who bring them Toyer, but not that the karbonis are Toyer. And for the Lashon is mashma, the karbonis themselves have this identity of being Toyer. On the other hand, Lenin kipshutik mashmoye. Now the other choice is to learn a simple pshat, that the karbonis are Torah. It says to learn that way, after Heirin Batzitzich of the karbonis atzman, that the word Heirin refers to the karbonis themselves, is echt nicht glatik. It's also not simple. When you find as Teiras about karbonis nutzen the Agdora von Heirin, we don't find that the Teiras should refer to karbonis, that when the Teiras mag that describe we need them gather from Tehillim. We don't find we learn that you should use the term Tehillim when you describe karbonis. So you can't learn the simple pshat that karbonis Tehillim is a karbonis atoyer, because that's not the style of the Torah that you use Tehillim for karbonis. The other pshat is also not clear. So we're stuck here with what's the pshat karbonis atoyer. The chur of it we can't learn. First glance we could have learned like this. The gather from Tehillim doi medish that when the Medrash refers to Karbonis and is magdid it, which means describes it as Teherin, is masim the mitvas Chazal zogen when the Karbonis for Lifnei Matan Torah. This fits to what the Chazal, the Chachomim, when they speak about the Karbonis that were brought, as we find in Chumash, before the Torah was given. So there it says, Hakol Ksheri L'Korev, all kinds of animals are allowed to be brought as a korban before Matan Torah. Chaya, I mean, first it says behema. Behema means a domestic animal. Chaya means even if it's a wild animal, but it's a category of chaya, which after Matan Torah you can bring a chaya. Even if it's a kosher chaya, you can bring a chaya. Chaya mashal would be, let's say, a deer. You can bring a deer as a korban. But before Matan Torah you could bring a behema, domestic animal, a chaya, or a eif. You could bring a bird, schorin. Could be males, the kavis, females. Tmimim, they could be complete without a blemish. Balimumim, you could bring even if it has a blemish. Before Matan Torah, all these restrictions that we have after Matan Torah weren't there. After Matan Torah, some karbonas specifically have to be schorim, some have to be in the kavis, but you can't say that you can bring anyone you want. But there's one condition, had to be Teirin. That's what it says. That's what the Chazal is saying, Gemara Zvachim, it had to be Teirin. Teirin means Toher, which means in this case kosher. You could only bring an animal, any type of animal, but as long as it's kosher, avalei tmeim, but not tamei. Behema tmeia means a non-kosher animal. So we see the karbonas before Matan Torah were referred to as teirim, because the only condition that they had to be toyer. So says that the gather from karbonas far Matan Torah is teirim. So if you look before Matan Torah, how would you describe what allows us an animal to be a korban if it's teirim? So there we do use the word teirim. So when we say here that Karbonas Ateirim refers to the Karbonas the way they were before Matan Torah. Now, why would we refer to before Matan Torah? We're talking about the children learning about Karbonas. Why would the Medrash refer to the Karbonas with the title that it had before Matan Torah? We're talking about now, that the children start off learning from Vayikra, because they're taught the Karbonas Ateirim. So why would we use a term which is used only for Karbonas before Matan Torah? So the Rebbe explains, when the shaykhs from the karbonas far Matan Torah and the connection between the karbonas before Matan Torah to what we're talking about here for the children is in them, we could explain it. Is this was doretz wegen tinekes? We're talking about children, ktanim, young children. Was eine nit mechoyev in karbonas. Children under bar mitzvah don't have an obligation of bringing karbonas. They're not mechoyev in karbonas. So if they're not mechoyev in karbonas, so when we talk about karbonas in reference to children, is as bedugma to the karbonas for Matan Torah. So that's similar to the Kabbalah before Matan Torah. Mas is noch nicht given kein mitzvah v'chiyuv of Kabbalah. There was no mitzvah, no obligation for Kabbalah. So it makes sense. So that's why we refer to Kabbalah as Torah. Before Matan Torah, that's how it was. And children, when they are talking about Kabbalah, it's something that is like before Matan Torah because they're not mechuyev. But that's discussion. The Rebbe said it's hard to say this pshat. Why? The Medrash the Mazvid them tam was maschil litinekes b'teiras kayanim. Medrash explains why do we start learning with the children Teiras Kenim, which is Chumash Vayikra. Now, Chumash Vayikra was an halve dine for Karbonas for noch Matan Torah. Chumash Vayikra talks about the Karbonas after Matan Torah. Is wie passt der Vergleich von Ktanim zu Karbonas Lifnei Matan Torah? So why would we? How does it fit here that we compare children to the Karbonas before Matan Torah, even though their matzav, their situation is like before Matan Torah? But that's not what they're learning. When they're learning about Karbonas, they're learning about the Karbonas after Matan Torah. So why would we refer to the Karbonas with a title that fits the before Matan Torah? Because they are not mechuyev similar. But that's not what they're learning. They're learning Teiras Kenim. Teiras Kenim is Chumash Vayikra, which talks about the Karbonas after Matan Torah. So the Rebbe continues like this. In Tanchume, in Medrash Tanchume, because this Maimer Chazal that we quoted, that children learn Vayikra because they're Teirin, is also brought in Tanchume. As the Rebbe says, in Orah 12, he says, Orah 3. In Orah 3, the Rebbe quotes the Lashon of what it says in Tanchume. But in Tanchume, werd gebracht der eben der Monter Maime. So we also have that same statement of the Chazal. Behemshech lazeh steht, and in continuation to that, it says, Lefichach ani maila aleim ki leim endim makribim lefonai hakarbonas. And because of that, I consider it, David says, I consider it as if they're standing and being makriv for me, korbonas. In other words, we're talking here about the children. That when the children learn, the Eibishter says, it says in Tanchume Behemshech, to be said before that the children start with korbonas, with Teiras Kenim. It continues. Therefore, the Eibishter says, I consider it as if they're standing and being makriv korbonas to me. It's teaching you, and even though the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Ein Korb Neig, and the Karbonas don't apply. If not for the children Shekenim and Seder HaKarbonas, that they learn the Seder of Karbonas, the world would not exist. That's what it says there. So the Rebbe asks, it's not understood. The Medrash Tanchuna, so here it comes out that the children, what makes the world stand because of Karbonas? The children was learning Karbonas. That's what it says there. And it's behemshach to the reason why they start learning from Teiras Kenim. It's the Medrash Tanchuma alone is the Noch Mamsheh. The same Medrash Tanchuma continues. That's what the Eibush said to Yidden. Bonai, my children. If you are involved, you learn Pasha of Karbonas. I consider it even brother Korban. Now, this is not talking about children. The Eibush says to Yidden generally. As jeder, was is Pasha Karbonas, not to make anybody who's involved in Pasha Karbonas, not only children, is Mailani Olav Killer, is Makeva Korban. The Eibush considers that even brother Korban. So this part of the Chumash says clearly that the learning of Karbonas of any Yid, David should consider as even brother Korban. Is wichtig, dass mit dem, what the Medrash sagt früher, how does this fit to the Medrash says earlier, as Ilule Atenekes Dafke, Shekerim Seder HaKarbonas Lehoye Elomeim. If not for the children learning, the world wouldn't stand. Because the children's learning about Karbonas makes the world stand. It seems like, could call it a contradiction. So first, the Medrash brings the statement that the children learn because they're Torah, so they should learn about Karbonas, which is Torah. Then it says, and therefore David says that when the children learn, that is Karbonas, and if not for the children, the world wouldn't stand. And then he says anybody learns, but if it's anybody, how does it fit to what I said before, that it's the children? So we have to say like this: as in from Korban, that when they learn about Karbonas, it's as if you brought the Korban. There's a mile in when the children learn, the way other people learn. So it's no contradiction. They're both true. When anybody learns, it's also like about the Korban. But he stresses before the children learn because there's something special in the children's learning about Karbonas. The senior what the Karbonas accomplish, if the children learn about Karbonas, that makes it even more complete. That makes more sure that the world will exist. Now we need to understand that. What is the mile of the children learning Karbonas over everybody? So we came to the conclusion that anybody who learns about Karbonas accomplishes, the world should stand, etc. It does, but there's something special in the children. Now we have to explain why. So first, to understand that, we have to first go back to the statement of the Chazal that we mentioned before. Before Matan Torah, you were able to bring Karbonas of all kinds of animals as long as they were toher, kosher. But those learned up from Neach, we learned up from Neach. Neach brought Karbonas from the animals he took into the table, into the ark. And there it says he brought animals which are toher, and he brought them as a korban. It says he took all the animals which were toher. That means any kosher animal could be brought as a korban. So where do we know this deen that before Matan Torah, that's how it was? From Neach. Correct. If them the Gemara, so the Gemara has, according to one Girs in Gemara, the time of Neach, was there such a thing as kosher animals and not kosher animals, which we refer to Torah and not Torah? It was before the Torah was given. And Torah 16, the Rebbe quotes Rashi. Rashi harei nitna Torah. Torah wasn't given, so there was no such thing as kosher and not. When the Gemara is masbir, and the inyan from Torah and them to give them eis mishasidim with Torah. When it says famous animals which are Torah, didn't mean that time they were Torah. That time you could eat any animal. Everything was kosher. But it means those that in the future will be kosher. The Girs in Gemara, like this is one of the Girs, is one of the ways the Gemara, the additions to the Gemara. With the Girs in Gemara, we Rashi brings the Perush al Torah, and Rashi brings this in his commentary on the Torah. Thus, haste, now that we're saying this, comes out at the Karbonas from Neach, par Matan Torah, in the Karbonas of Neach before Matan Torah, there were two opposites. What two opposites? The Karbonas was Neach had gebracht, and nicht given an von Kli Mitzvah. Karbonas he brought was not a mitzvah. Because before Matan Torah, there were no mitzvahs. Besides the 7 mitzvahs, but the Karbonas is not one of them. So the Karbonas Neach brought is not a fulfillment of a mitzvah. We could say maybe, even though it was not obligated, but we know the obvious, kept all the mitzvahs even though it wasn't given. So maybe Noach brought something that was not a mitzvah because he wasn't obligated, but maybe he kept it anyway. But that's not true. We don't find anywhere that Noach kept all the mitzvahs before it was given. Avraham, it says, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the others. But we don't find by Noach. So he had no mitzvahs. So the korbanos he brought were not part of a mitzvah. It's like we find in all times, even before Matan Torah, that people, and Adam Arishan himself, the Gemara says, they brought korbanos. Why? Not because they were commanded. For their own feeling, the different reasons. Adam Arishan brought a korban because he thanked Hashem for creating him. Cain and Hevel brought because of whatever reason. They had different reasons, but there was no mitzvah before Matan Torah to bring korbanos. On the other hand, he only brought those animals which in the future, after Matan Torah, will be kosher. It's from them gufa muchach. That proves that this that by Neach there was no difference. There was no difference between behemoth teirus and meis. That the Gabe himself, there was no difference kosher animals or not. Okay, like the Gemara asked me, at that time there was Tomei and Toir. So there was a difference, obviously. There was no difference in Toir and Tomei. But this is Nor Benegei Lachila. That's only Gabi eating. The Gabi eating, he could eat everything. There's no such thing as kosher and Toir. The kosher and not kosher, Toir and Tomei, as the Gemara asks. But the Havdalah from Toir and Tomei, Hashem also the Shem Ba'im given. But the difference between kosher animal not was there, even by him, before Matan Torah. There was such a difference because of the future, but it was negated to what was then, because that's why he's only able to bring korbanos which will in the future be kosher. So as much as it was not before Matan Torah, so there was no really difference between kosher and not, it was a difference. Not Lagabe eating, but Lagabe this, there was a difference. And the Rebbe says in Order 21, it says that the animals who came to the table came by themselves. And this is Rashi explains, he calls it the Mashot, Chedush Agodas, that any animal that came by itself to the table, you knew it was a kosher animal. Anyone was not kosher wouldn't come. So we see that before Matan Torah, by Negei and Noach, there was a difference in kosher animals and not kosher animals, which is, in other words, Tomei and Toher, even though there was really no difference in Gabachila. So it comes out like this. As from Noach's time, there was already a beginning of the concept of Torah. Even though it was before Matan Torah. Even further, it was even before the Oves that they behaved similar to after Matan Torah, because they did the whole Torah even though it wasn't given. So by them already it was something similar to Matan Torah. But in time of Noach, it wasn't. But nevertheless, there was some beginning. In other words, there are three stages he was saying. There's when the Torah was given, then you're mechuyev. By the Oves, that you were not mechuyev, but it was some connection. Before that, it seems like there was nothing to do, but we see there was, because there was already a concept of Tomei and Torah. So that's another. So it's before Noach's time, which is only a beginning, Avram, the Oves time, which was more, Matan Torah was more. And that's the reason why he brought a korban only from the kosher ones, those that will be kosher later on in the future, because there was already a concept of kosher and not kosher at that time, which means there was already a beginning of the concept of Matan Torah, of Torah. Very little, but already something was there, and then by the Oves it was more, and then by Matan Torah it was more. And now, since we find the connection between Noach and Torah, and things which have to do with the Torah, we only find concerning korbanos. We don't find anything else. Only by the korbanos that he brought, that he only brought kosher ones, which means that this inyan alone, we find that only Lagabe this, we find that there is a concept of Torah. Is Yashlema that Rabbi could say, Adosi Derfar, by Dafka Derinya from korbanos is be'ef miyuchat shayich eich edem ad bakum and Torah matan Torah. Because the concept of korbanos, what we're going to explain soon, what korbanos mean, that is shayches specifically also before Matan Torah. In other words, the union of karbonis, as much as the real karbonis is after Matan Torah, because it's a mitzvah and a chiyuv, an obligation, etc. Nevertheless, if you think deeper, as the Rebbe will explain, what karbonis are, it has that dafke of karbonis has a shaykhus before Matan Torah when there was no mitzvah, no chiyuv to do it. So this union of karbonis has a special shaykhus even before Matan Torah. It has a special shaykhus to Matan Torah. Karbonis dafke. What is the pshat? Eine von the beauty of us kennen them sagen. One of the explanations we can say is like this. Karbonis. Eich von noch Matan Torah. Karbonis bechlal. Even the karbonis after the Torah was given. Afal pi as is eine von Tayag mitzvahs Torah, even though they're part of the 630 mitzvahs of Torah. Sagen sie ober bepulosam, but in what they accomplish, obele b'mehusam, b'mele what they are, what their contents is, hecher from Torah mitzvahs. It's something that's beyond, higher than Torah mitzvahs. Where do we see it? That's why bringing a korban could forgive if something missed something out in keeping the Torah mitzvahs. And it's mashlim. And it finishes off, completes. And he quotes in the Torah 25, Reya Geras Atshuva. In Geras Atshuva, he says, what do you have a korban? Even after you did tshuva, and the Aveira is wiped off, but in order to make it complete, you bring a korban. So korbanos helps get rid of Averas. Now, if it helps get rid of Averas, it means it's higher than Torah. Because if it would be the same level of Torah mitzvahs, and there is some kind of blemish within Torah mitzvahs, some kind of problem, to get rid of that, you have to go beyond it. Because if you're going to do something within that level has a problem. You did an Avera. So you have to have something that's beyond that in order to erase it. Besigna nachar, another way to say it. When a Yid brings a korban Hashem, when a Yid brings a korban to Hashem, drickt demitui sein korban Hashem, he expresses his being close to Hashem, sein Verbund mit dem Eibishten, was hat be'etzem als a Yid. This expresses the fact that he's connected to the Eibishter as a Yid. Welcher is nicht told in Kiyam Torah mitzvahs, which doesn't depend on Torah mitzvahs. In other words, to be a Yid, it's not because you think Torah mitzvahs. You're a Yid because you're a Yid. He is born a Yid, or Megayah Ke'alocha. He's a Yid, connected to the Eibishter no matter what. A Yid has to do Torah mitzvahs. The Eibishter needs Torah mitzvahs, but that doesn't make him to a Yid. So when a person has a problem with his Torah mitzvahs, how do you reach what do you do? How do you get rid of your Averas? You have to reach a level where you are there, independent of the union of Torah mitzvahs. And over there, the fact that you did an Avera doesn't count. And when you're mamsheh from there, it erases the Avera. He says, just like your connection, your essential connection to the Eibishter is not done only because you're doing Torah mitzvahs. The connection is there no matter what. So too, that connection is not missing anything if you don't do Torah mitzvahs. In other words, that level is there no matter what. You have to do Torah mitzvahs because every Yid has Torah mitzvah, but the nekuda of him being a Yid is beyond Torah mitzvahs. It didn't come through Torah mitzvahs, and it doesn't go away from Torah mitzvahs. The atzvazike Verbund von Yidin mit dem Eibishter is hecher from Torah mitzvahs. The essential connection between Yid and the Eibishter is beyond Torah mitzvahs. Like it says, there's a person, you are children to Hashem, and the Chazal say, the Gemara says that even if you sin, you're still a child. A child is a child. If he does the right thing or not, and he even goes against his father, he's still a child. You can't change that. So a Yid is a Yid no matter what. And that's the connection a Yid has to the Eibishter. And that's the reason why Karbonis could forgive for an Avera. Why? If a Yid is ever goes against the will of Hashem, and he makes a blemish chas v'sholem in his unity, in his connection with Hashem, which is caused through Torah mitzvahs. That connection to Hashem, which is through Torah mitzvahs, if you don't Torah mitzvahs, you're missing something there. When that happens, you could fix that through karbonos. Why? How? By awakening and revealing through bringing the korban, the essential connection of a Yid to the Eibishter. In that connection, there is no gam, there's no blemish. And when you reach that level, and you're mamsheh, so to speak, on that level, das is mechaper. That's mechaper. What does the word mechaper mean? Wischt up dem Kampf von Chetvaven. It wipes out. The word kapora means wipe out. It wipes out the blemish that came through Aveda because you reached yourself the level beyond it. And in order 28, 29, the Rebbe explains it a little bit. Al derech, he says, order 28. See, first in order 27, the Rebbe says that there is a connection you get through Torah mitzvahs. Like the word mitzvah is Lashon Tzapsa B'chibra, connection. And if you do an Aveda, you make a pagam, a blemish in that connection that you get to the Eibishter through Torah mitzvahs. But Korbanos are able to change that. Al derech hamavoyer, Hora 28, Al derech hamavoyer gab a klolos Avedas Tshuva. Just like we learn by Tshuva B'chlal. It says in a lot of places, in Chassidus and Sichos, that Tshuva, how is it able to fix an Aveda? Because Tshuva is beyond Torah mitzvah. So you reach a level higher. Elois, he says, the proti is Yeshna Beis Inyonim. If you go more detailed, there are two Inyonim. Tshuva and Korbanos. Tshuva is higher and it takes away a certain level. And Korbanos is higher also and it takes away another part of the Aveda because they're both higher. And with the Geir Korbanos, it says in order 29, it says in Zayar, the Rosa, the Korban Elad Rosa. So the secret of Korbanos reaches all the way into the secret, into the essence of the Eibishter, which is where the connection of the Eibishter and Eden is not dependent on anything. So even if you did Aveda, that connection is there, but you got to reach in that connection. So through Tshuva you reach there, but what we're talking here is Korbanos makes you reach there, and B'meila it takes away the Avedas. Now kommt zu a Teis v'samon im ganzen Korbanos. This gives an additional understanding in what's the holiness of Korbanos. What's not understood? You could ask a good question. Wie kommt es, der Kavo Aveda, was der Eibishter hat eingestellt, verrieten soll sein, Avedas Korbanos? How is it that the Eibishter said, and we have Torah Aveda is Milos Chesodim, in Torah, then you have Aveda serving Hashem, and Milos Chesodim, which goes b'chal and all mitzvahs. What's Aveda? So nowadays we say Aveda is Tefillah because it's in place of Korbanos, but originally Aveda is Korbanos. So what is the Aveda of Hashem? Is through Korbanos. Why is it through Korbanos? What's Korbanos? You slaughter an animal, and you bring it on the Mizbeach, sacrifice on the Mizbeach. That's what the highest Aveda is. It would fit more if it would be something spiritual. Aveda Ruchnias. Aveda Shebelev. Originally it should have been Aveda of the heart, which is Tefillah, Ketz, Davening. So bring Taruz, the Verbindung von Iten mit der Lukus, Neifen Golo Yes. That brings out the connection of Yitad Eibush, the more revealed way. What's Aveda Shebelev? That in your heart you feel close to Eibush, you think about Eibush. That we understand is a way that you serve Hashem. But through taking an animal, shechting an animal, that's the way, that's Aveda of the Eibishter. Especially Korbanos is not something special for eating. We're talking here about the connection. You get close through Korbanos to the Eibishter. Goyim could also bring Korbanos. Not special by Eden. Goyim also have a right to be Makrav Korbanos. And even the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash, there's a din that if he wants to bring a korban today, Beis Hamikdash is allowed to do it. And there's another thing, they could bring korbanos not in the Beis Hamikdash. A goy could bring korbanos on the boma. Al pidin, a goy could make his own small mizbeach and bring a korban today. A yid is not allowed to. From when the Beis Hamikdash was built, you can't bring a korban anywhere besides in the Beis Hamikdash. When we have a Beis Hamikdash or whatever the klolim are, you can't bring anywhere else. And if you do it, it's called shchuti chutz. It's a big avera. A goy could bring a korban on a boma, on a small mizbeach he makes. So the union of Korbanos is shaykhid by goyim also. So why would that be something that's special for a yidden that they are connected to the Eibishter through their Aveda? What's the Aveda Korbanos? Now this movement, based on what we said before, is understood. The in a sense is other Aved, because it's only an animal that you shech, and it's not your feeling. You ask the kasha, it should be something that you feel. Dafke because of that. That's why this is the main Aveda. Why? Dafke der Fall, wo die Iskashes Atzim von Naiden mit Nebischen ist Hecher von der Iskashes und seiner Aveda mit der Mitzvahs. Because the real connection Naid has to the Eibishter, the essential connection, is beyond anything, any Aveda that the Yid could do, that he accomplishes that. Und sie kommt mit only there because Hashem chose it. In other words, if we would be dependent, if the Aveda would be that I feel closer to the Eibishter and I work on myself, then that's a skashres, a connection to the Eibishter that's based on something. It becomes through something. We were talking about the skashres, the Eibishter is essential. It's not dependent on anything. It's only b'bchiros, but Hashem chose the Yidden, and that's where we're connected, no matter what you do. As Choch och Esav Yankov, the pasuk says that even if Esav and Yankov are brothers, which means they seem to be similar, Afa became favors Yankov. David says, I still love Yankov. Why? If they're the same, which means they don't behave differently. So why? Nevertheless, David says, I love Yaakov. Mitzad b'chiros Hashem chose. Hashem chose Yaakov, which means the Yidden. He chose the Yidden, not dependent on what people do. For that reason, because we're trying to say that this is expressed, as we said, not Torah mitzvahs, which is something that you do, but with something that is there essentially without what you do. That's what kabbalah, we said before, is. That's why it's dafka in a case like this, where it has nothing to do with your feeling. But superficially, when you see kabbalah, doesn't show any ruchnias b'chlal, and especially ruchnias of a yid, doesn't show it. And you don't even see a difference between the kabbalah of a yid and the kabbalah of a guy. So there's nothing that you show from the yid's part that he is connected to the Eibishter. Nothing that he shows. Because if it would be what he shows, it means it depended on him. Nor the Avedis HaKabbanis for Yidden is made a discussion. But on the other hand, only when the Yid brings the Korban, that connects the Yidden, brings out the connection that's there. Not that makes the connection, it is Megala, reveals the connection. Which means something which is similar to the Goy. And it's not something that you show your difference. And that's what the Eibishter expresses, that you bring out the expression of the Eibishter's Bechire Nayid. Al derech with the Eibishter is Beiche Dafke in the Gufa Nayiden, welches is nicht mehr bekommen Yusel Gufa Sum Seelen. Quotes from Tanya. Tanya, it says, when it says the Eibishter chose us. Now, choice means when there are two similar things. If you have two separate things, different things, and you take the one you like, that's not choice, that's free choice. Person has an apple and an orange, and I'm looking for an apple. And I take the apple. I didn't choose the apple. Because I don't like an orange, I only want an apple. If I have two equal things and they're both the same, both apples, and they look exactly like and everything, I take one. That's free choice. There's nothing that I chose it just because of choice. Same thing. The neshama of Id is different than the goy. Where is the real choice? In the body of Id, it says in Tanya. The body of Id is similar in its physicality. It's similar to the bodies of the goyim, and that's what David chose. That's what the bechira is. Same thing here. Karbonis is shachas by goyim too, and that's what David expresses. I chose the Yidden. And that's why it's only in something that is not because of your expression of your feeling. It means that now we'll understand why the kabbanas dafke before Matan Torah of Neach had a connection to Matan Torah. See, since they given together from Torah and Hashem Osik, we said before that this whole concept of being Torah, being kosher, which was before the Torah was given, even before the Ovis, there was no such thing. Nevertheless, Lagabe Karbonis, already the concept of kosher and not kosher, which is part of Torah, was already there. And we said before that this is connected dafke by karbonis. Like nothing else we find that already we see some beginning of Torah in the time of Noach. By karbonis, why dafke by karbonis? We understand now. This was Noach, this was that Noach brought karbonis, was as a thanks to God, for them was said is geratet given from Mabul. The fact that he was saved from the Mabul. Like the pasuk says, "Vayiskar lakimus Neach." David should remember Neach, and then he saved them. Now, what does that mean? Now, you do the hezber. It's known. It says in Chassidus and Ayin Beis that brings it other places that the explanation for was there pasuk Vayiskar lakimus Neach. Why this pasuk where it says that Hashem remembered Neach by the Mabul is eine for the psuke zechreines was werden gesagt in Musaf the Rosh Hashanah. We know that Rosh Hashanah we have to say psuke malchi zechreines shefres. In the Musaf, we have to say psukim that show that Eibishter is a melech, and we have to psukim of zechreines, psukim where it talks about Hashem remembering, and psukim that talks about shefer. One of the psukim that we say that shows that Hashem remembered is this pasuk by Neach. Now, the reason it says in Gemara why we have to say psukim of zechreines, because by doing that, this the Eibishter will remember the Yidden. If we're talking about the Eibishter remembering the Yidden, has nothing to do with Noach. So why would this be one of the psukim to do this? To say that Noach, since this is one of the psukim, means that this pasuk Hashem remembered Noach, hot a kesher is a tale for Yalazech Nechem in front of the table. The Gemara says, why should you say the psukim? Kadei sheyalazech Nechem, that the zikoron of Yidden, the remembrance of Yidden, should come to the Eibishter for the good. But we're talking about Noach here. So it says, "By the schira von Neach and Gebemetz at Etzemailas and Neshamas Yisrael." The fact that Eibush remembered Neach is because Neshamas Yisrael, the Etzemail of Neshamas. As the far Zokman, the Gamas Neach Ba'ava Zachart. That's why before we mentioned the pasuk, we say you remembered Neach with love. What's main? That's what it says in Chassidus. The Ava Pnimis Va'atzman Shel Neshamas Yisrael. The love that Eibush has, the eternal, the essential, and the pnimistic love that David has to neshamas. We're talking about Neach here. It says this has to do with the neshamas. Neach was before Matan Torah, which means before David chose Eden. When did David choose Eden? By Matan Torah. So comes out as Chotch Neach given far Matan Torah, even though Neach was before Matan Torah. Was demel the given the Ravana B'chartem Kolam Voloshin. That's when happened. David chose the small nations, because in order 37, the Rebbe says that for the Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, it says that before Krishma we say a few different words. So when we say the words you chose the small nations, we have to think about Matan Torah. Why? Because when did this happen by Matan Torah? Not by Neach. So Neach was before Matan Torah, before David chose Eden. And it wasn't even like the Ovis was Mitzayis given the Ascholo from Am Yisrael. By the Ovis already to a certain degree started the beginning of the nation of Eden. Kishmom Ovis, we call them Ovis, means that the fathers of the nation. So the nation started. But this was even before. Nevertheless, even though before the Ovis, Neach had a Shaychas to Neshamas, but the father by Neach and given Aschide Ba'avim, it's an Etzemal to Neshamas Yisrael. That's why by Neach, David remembered him Ba'ave, which is the Ava that the Eibishter has to Yidin B'tzad and Neshamas, which means it's understood. If the whole Ava of the Eibishter to Yidin would be based on Torah mitzvahs, then it has nothing to do with Neach. But if we're saying this is something that's beyond Torah mitzvahs, it's Be'etzem, so it fits the Neach also, because it was already at the beginning of Yidin becoming a nation, before they received the chiyuvim, the obligations, the mitzvahs. And this is something higher, that's why it fits Neach also. And the mitzvah is move for that we understand. For what the karbonos was Neach gebrach, behemshach to the schire. That's why the karbonos that Neach brought in continuation, connection to the Hashem remembering him. But he doye, for sein nitzel ben from Abel, and the karbonos he brought then was because Hashem remembered him, and he thanked Hashem for being saved from the Mabel. But he had a shaycha to the karbonos from Eden lacher matan Torah. He had a shaycha to the karbonos from Eden. Why? Shaychus to the karbonos dafke, because even by us after Matan Torah, the karbonos represent the etzem of Yidin, not the Torah, something beyond the Torah. So therefore, it could happen by Neach also. Neach was not chayiv Torah, so he was. But the etzem was there already. The etzem, the beginning of the etzem of Yidin, started even the time of Neach, and that is dafke by karbonos. We said before, why do we mention the union of Matan Torah, Tumah v'Tara, only the gaba karbonos? Nothing else we find by Neach that had to do with later. Why dafka karbonos? Because even karbonos after Matan Torah is also something that has to do for the etzem, which is beyond Torah. And those have the beer in them, but the matter is talking in the karbonos from Torah scanning by karbonos Torah. This explains what he asked in the beginning. And it says that the children who are Torah start learning Torah scanning, which is karbonos, which are Torah. And the question was, why mention karbonos Torah? But we said before, Torah is the agdora in the karbonos from far Matan Torah. Now, where do we find the concept of Torah by karbonos before Matan Torah? But the question was, why would we mention the children's learning Torah, learning karbonos, in Torah? Because before Matan Torah is called Torah. Why would we refer to karbonos before Matan Torah to the children? Now we understand why. The from karbonos is canal. Since the meaning of karbonos is, as we said before, to Megalo, sein the Abba Atzmi Shalakadosh Baruch Hu. Was this hecher from the Abba Shal Torah? Since it is to reveal the love, the essential love of Hashem, which is beyond, higher than the love that comes through Torah. Where do we see it? Where do we see that karbonos is beyond Torah? So we know it's true, like we said before, because that wipes out Aveda, etc., etc. But where do we really see it? In the karbonos before Matan Torah. The Chaydes is given the tzibui of karbonos. After Matan Torah, after all, there is a mitzvah of karbonos, so it is part of Torah. If we want to show where do we see karbonos, the purity of karbonos that represents beyond Torah, that's by the karbonos before Matan Torah. Mashenke noch Matan Torah is the karbonos ein initial mitzvah. After Matan Torah, they're a mitzvah. He's in der fahren nit niker begolov is ein meile from the pull of Torah. You can't see openly How they're beyond Torah? Because it's part of Torah, it's part of mitzvahs. Before Matan Torah, when there were no mitzvahs, there was no mitzvah of Korban, and nevertheless, you put a Korban. That shows that there is an essential thing here behind Torah. So that's why Dafki in the unit of Karbonis, we find the connection of Matan Torah, because the Bechira, because Matan Torah, the Eibusha gave us a Torah, true. But another thing that happened then, the Eibusha chose us as a nation. That choice is beyond. It happened by Matan Torah, but that choice is beyond Torah. And that we see by Karbonis from Matan Torah. It's true by Karbonis after Matan Torah also, but there we don't really see it because it's a mitzvah. Before Matan Torah we see it. Because I know what the Medrash sagt, this will explain. But the Medrash says, that we start with children with Karbonis, because let the Tahirim come, which our children are pure, and let them get involved in learning about the Tahirim, which is the Karbonis, and we refer to Karbonis Tahirim because that's how they were referred to as before Matan Torah. And he says why it has to do with children. And he said before that the Medrash says also that every Yid who learns about Karbonis makes the world stand. So why especially children? He said by children there's something special. Now we will see what is special by children, that this inyan that we said now, that we see the essence of a Yid connected to the Eibishter. Yam Torah, we see more by the children. He'll explain it. The three times, three periods that we find Benigaya generally Eden. Number one, Zin Matan Torah. The biggest one was from Matan Torah, when Yidden Makabel Ben Mekayim Ben Torah Mitzvah Tzivah Hashem, when Yidden received the Torah, and they filled the Torah, and they did the Torah because they wished to command it. That's one period. Then we have a period before that, on Ebedik from the others. Like we said before, from the others on. They did the Torah, but it wasn't given yet. But they already studied the Torah. Then you have the previous, before that, noch früher. The third is from Neach on. Vemes is given not a shaykh at the Torah. It had a connection to it. I gather from Tumah V'Tara Kanal. It had this concept of Tumah V'Tara, which is a certain connection in a minute way, but already a beginning of connection to Matan Torah. So these three periods in the history of Yidden, Yeshleimer as the Gmosim for the Drei Tkufas is Dabei Yidden. Similar to that, every Yid has these three periods in his life. Number one, after you become bar mitzvah or a girl bas mitzvah, now you're mechuyev to do mitzvahs. Like Matan Torah, now you're mechuyev to do mitzvahs. Then you have the second thing, which is before that, when he started being in the age that you have to start educating him, and he still has to do mitzvahs. A Kohen has to do mitzvahs, but it's only a preparation to the time when they're obligated, which is similar to the others. They didn't have to do it, but this was a preparation to Matan Torah. Then you have a third thing, when a child, a baby, before he even reached the level that he understands and you could educate him. When this is noch nicht shaykh is before he could even do Torah mitzvahs. But still, the Balder is a Yiddish kind, but the Rech a shaykh tzatera. And since he's a Yid, even as a baby is a shaykh tzatera. When you say the Mizu, we say even more. Ihm is gegeben geworden the Torah is given to him. And the Torah is B'Torah's Yerusha, the Torah is an inheritance. As we say, it's an inheritance. And the din by inheritance is, if someone passes away and he leaves a baby that's a day old, that baby inherits everything. So a baby could inherit. And Torah is an inheritance. So the Torah is given even to the babies. When they're at to give the Torah, which is similar to the case of Noach, which was not only after Matan Torah, not only by the Ovis time, but the time before yet, when there's no Torah at all, and nevertheless there's a Shaykh Torah in the Noach's time, so to here. Now comes the punchline. And since by a child, before he even reached the level of understanding, and you should have to educate him, there's no Torah mitzvahs, he has nothing to do. By a baby, by a little baby, that's where you see the essential mile of a Yid, that he's a Yiddish kid. The Aver Pnimis V'atzvitz Meibishn Zeniten is mer begilui by Yiddish kind, kenim shegil lechinuch. The special love that Hashem has to a Yid, because he's a Yid, nothing else, is more revealed by a little child before even the Gil lechinuch. Because when you're older and you're mechuyev mitzvahs, and David loves you, you could always connect that. Why does he love you? Because you're doing Torah mitzvah. Even before bar mitzvah, you're still doing Torah mitzvah. It's not a lower level of preparation. So still, it's not so begilu that it's because you're a Yid, because you're doing the right thing. But by a baby, a little kid, why does David love him? because they're Yid, which has nothing to do with Torah mitzvah. He's not shaykh as a Torah mitzvah, not even together. But he's shaykh, shaykh as he is like the first level, but he's not doing a Torah mitzvah. That expresses because he's a Yiddish kind, he's a Jewish child, the Eibush loves him. So children are similar to the Karbonis before Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, we said Karbonis always represents the essential connection of Yid to the Eibush. But before Matan Torah, it expresses more. A baby, a little child, also the same thing. When das is was the Medrash zog, that's what the Medrash says. Let the children, little kids, Tanekis, who are called Tatum, get involved in Tatum Karbonis, which is called Tatum. Vibal the Hinyan Karbonis, Arusru from the Galzain, the Ava Atzis from Eibush and Tzemiden. Since the Karbonis is to bring out and to reveal the essential love that the Eibush has to Yidden, from the Ava Shantanim Tatum, which is higher than the Eibush that loves Yidden because you learn Tatum. What's Mitzad Dem Ava Vertuv Giton Vikapore. And because of this essential Ava, which is higher than Torah, that's why Yid could be forgiven for not learning Torah. It's Avera. How could he be forgiven and that should be wiped out, that blemish? Because there is the singing of beyond Torah. So that's what he says. Since Karbonas are supposed to bring out this level, they're lying in an ort with their tumme, in an tumme kommt nicht zu, rührt nicht on, because through Karbonas you reach a level which the Avedas don't affect, they don't touch the fathers, your Ve'et is asking them. So who really has the main thing of what Karbonas represent? The Ave Atzmi is the essential connection of David to the Yidden, that by the little kids. As Odi Saskas in Teirim, this involvement in Teirim, which is the Karbonas before Matan Torah, which is which we see for they learn about the Karbonas after Matan Torah, but the Karbonas is mainly where we see what it is we see it from before Matan Torah, which is called Teirim. So Zayin der Chiddushach Kinder v'Zachin Teirim. That should mainly come through the little children, the Jewish little children, which are Torah. We attach this up in Tanchume, and in Tanchume, in Medrash, it explains it. Because little children are Torah, they don't know the taste of an Avera. And the Rebbe teaches it, that means not only they don't know the taste. An Avera is not Shaykhs. After Bar Mitzvah, Gordel is Shaykhs in Avera. Before Bar Mitzvah is also Shaykhs, a lower level of Avera. But the baby is not Shaykhs Avera. It's not Shaykhs. The father was Bazei is Meir, Begilu, the Ava Atzmis from David, because by them shines that love that David has, Begilui, so Yidden be'etzem beyond Torah. That will also explain why this union that the Torah should come and get involved in learning about Torah, which is the Kriya in Torah's Kenim durch the Neikes, the reading, the learning of Torah's Kenim, Pashas Chumash Vayikra, through the children. It says in the Medrash that what they learn, that makes the world stand. Why? This that adults learn the parsha of Karbonas is doch nit a maise. That's not an act that they do. What do? They learn kaveret. That's something they have in their mind, in their thought, and they speak. The Alter Rebbe is masbir. Alter Rebbe explains machshava zu tefillah aveda shebelev shleget Karbonas. That what's connected, what's parallel to Karbonas in place of Karbonas is the machshava. When you daven and you have the aveda in your heart, which is machshava. Dibur is Talmud Torah when you learn about Karbonas. So after all, it's not with an act. But these two garments of the person, spiritual garments, is says in Tanya that the main thing of machshava is to reveal to himself his feeling. When you think, same thing with dibur, you reveal to somebody else your feeling, your midas. So all it is to machshava and dibur is the revelation of where you are at. In Zay is that can need the ACS. It's not the words, just the words themselves. Because I am not the words, which in that is put in the seichel, in the words that you have. The main thing is that the seichel you have the words are words themselves. But the words of machshava and dibur, thought and speech, are levushim that contain a seichel or a feeling, and that's what machshava dibur is. The main thing is to, in your mind, to understand something, your mind to express your feeling, but not the ACs. Since in learning Torah of an adult, and even davening of an adult, the Aveda Shebelev is only machshava and dibur. Machshava and dibur is an expression of where you are at. What's your feeling? What do you understand? Oh, so that's a connection to the Eibishter that comes because of you, because of your behavior, the way you feel. Der Vater herzlich will nicht auf a Seifel, the Meile Atzmis von Aiden. So in that, you don't really feel so much the main essential Meile of Aid was is mit Zatchiras HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because David chose Eden. Because here, since it comes, the karbonas that we learn about comes through something that expresses our feeling, so we don't see in it that this is connected to the essence of the Avos Atzmis of David to Eden, because it comes as a result of something you feel. Only the reading and the learning of little children. It says you start, which means they didn't learn anything till now. The beginning of their learning, which is before they already started, and you're mechanech them, you explain to them what Torah is. They have no understanding. So what is it by them? By them, it's not they. They say words. They don't know what it means, and they don't understand what it means. But it's saying words. And this is at the beginning, before they understand, as we see the actual meaning is, when we start children teaching Chumash from Vayikra, is only we start that. Aber danach lernt man mit then you learn a different order. Every place learns different. Some places learn Chumash from Bereshis then and on. Some places learn every week, the beginning of the parsha of the week. But that's already a seder of learning. But he start only at the beginning. He's reading the words of the karbonis. Now, reading the words of the karbonis, it's only reading, which means it's not them. Because when you read and you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know, that's just something essential. The Rika Rabbi is neither Teichen Adibur, not Yakimas Fasaim Shalaktanim. It's not what they're speaking about, it's just that their words are speaking about karbonis. Dafke dos ruft aruis and megalo the ava atzis from the Eibishter. That dafke this brings out the ava atzis of the Eibishter to Ayid beyond what the Yid does, beyond Torah mitzvahs, beyond his own feeling. Al derech anal sibov atchiras hakadosh baruch in gupta. Like we said before, the Eibishter chose Yid, but which part do we see that he chose? The body. The body is not what's inside the body. It's not your feeling. It's not your seichel. It's the physicality. Same thing. The learning or the reading of the children is physicality. It's only speaking, and that's all. And there's nothing in there that expresses you to be able to think that maybe because of what you're expressing, that's why David. It's not that. It's David himself. The mele is the uftur them betachas hashleimus. That's why where do we have the shleimus of what we want to accomplish to karbonis, which is to express the essential connection of Eden to the Eibishter, is dafke in that. And that's bavorent is also the elamaimet, and dafke the children's makes that the world stands, because this is the whole kavanah why David made the world. So Taka, every time a Yid learns Torah, Taka, the Medrash says, accomplished great things. Shem says, like he brought karbonis. But the real thing is after with the children. So now we see all the details of the different Medrashim and different expressions fit. This gives a deeper insight into what the end of karbonis are.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Schapiro. Zeh Geschmack. Nice job.
Like, that's the truth.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Shekayach.